I'm Alayna Loiselle. I'm an associate professor in the Center for Musculoskeletal Research and the departments of orthopedics and physical performance, biomedical engineering, and pathology and laboratory medicine at the University of Rochester Medical Center. Yeah, to be honest, when I got to Rochester, I actually avoided considering labs in the Center for Musculoskeletal Research as a PhD student because it was such a large group and it sort of seemed like the obvious place that most students rotated. So I rotated in a few other labs in different departments, but the draw of the CMSR was too great. And once I was in there as a rotation student, it was very obvious that it was a very dynamic training environment. There was a lot of robust interaction with the clinical side of things, and for me, that was a big draw. Sort of making sure the science I was going to do was connected to the clinical side. And so that was sort of how I got started, was that, I came to an institution where orthopedics was really sort of a center point of the institution. And there was just such a critical mass of great investigators that it was very hard to resist. Yeah, so I did my PhD here at the University of Rochester with Regis O'Keefe, and then I did a postdoctoral fellowship at Penn State College of Medicine with Hank Donahue. And I've been very fortunate to have receive a lot of mentorship outside of my formal mentors as well. Both from senior faculty above me at the institutions I've been at, but also within the ORS community. But also have been very fortunate to have a lot of great peer mentoring. I think there's a really critical mass of investigators at my stage. And we've sort of grown up together. And so it's really been great to benefit from that. But when we think about mentoring, really what I think about is how did my mentoring style evolve? And so, as a PhD student, I actually had a lot of latitude to sort of dictate the direction that my research went in. And I think this really allowed me to develop very strong technical skills and sort of identify research niches that I thought were important. And then I also had the technical tools to be able to pursue those directions. And so that's something I really try to prioritize with my students is, people tend to be very excited and motivated when they have the opportunity to pursue questions that they're very interested in. And then, opposite that, in my postdoc, I actually went into bone biology and regeneration. And this obviously didn't end up being the research direction that I ended up pursuing. But the training was really transformative for me in terms of understanding the role of the PI in mentoring and building a lab culture where people could maximize their potential. And so, both of those experiences really shape how I run my lab and mentor the trainees in my lab. So my lab is mostly focused on sort of fundamental tendon cell biology, kind of understanding the cells that make up the tendon, and how those different cell populations participate in the response to injury, or the response to sort of homeostatic disruptions such as aging. There's a few things that we're working on that I'm really excited about. We're obviously continuing to focus on fundamental aspects of tendon cell biology and cell fate decisions in the context of acute injury and aging. We're also taking some of our basic science findings and making them more translational, including trying to test some therapeutics in larger animal models, clinical studies, and licensing some of our existing patents to try to move things forward towards the clinic. And then actually a really recent thing, we're also doing some basic and translational studies focused on soft tissue fibrosis in a non-musculoskeletal context. So it's been very exciting to try to get up to speed in a different tissue. I think the first thing is just be comfortable putting yourself out there, right? The worst thing someone can tell you is no. But I would much rather have someone actively tell me no than to, wonder what would have happened if I had, put myself out there for this. So I think it's being comfortable and taking that risk. But I think taking that risk of getting the no is a sort of a fundamental part of our job, right? We do that with papers, we do that with grants. And so I think this is, just one more piece of that. And then I guess the second piece would be, I think part of good science actually lives in the weeds, but I think one of the things for an award like this is you actually have to be able to put your work into a bigger context. And so sort of taking a few steps back and thinking about, not just the nitty gritty, but actually how does this all come together, with the ultimate goal of influencing clinical care. And then I guess the final part is, advice for this award, but also just frankly about this career is we have to get comfortable talking about ourselves in, a positive light. That's part of our promotion package, part of tenure packages. And, also I think we do have to live on the good bits that we get in this career, since we are, again, putting ourselves out there, and sort of asking for a lot of ongoing criticism and critique. And so you just sort of have to get comfortable talking about, some of the benefits that your work has had. So I think, a little bit what I just said about applying for this board also applies. We have to just accept that there's sort of an intrinsic struggle in this job, that we're, always going to be taking the punches, as I think of it, and then asking for more. And that's, I think, really how science becomes better, is by asking for that feedback. And in terms of students, when students are thinking about joining my lab, we talk about finding the good struggle, right? So these are the struggles, the challenges that are going to help develop them into good scientists. And so, that means you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel for things that, my lab is good at, but rather, spend their time working through the hurdles that are going to lead them to a more in-depth understanding or a new understanding of their system. And I think, that also applies for faculty. Is, we got to take the wins where we can get them, and also just accept that, we're going to get, we're going to get sometimes harsh feedback, but really, as long as we're working towards doing better science, I think that's the main thing to focus on.